Miracle Mineral Solution.
Miracle Mineral Solution.
The Miracle Mineral Solution.
Miracle Mineral Solution.
MMS is made with sodium chlorite, an ingredient in many industrial cleaners, and it's the religious sacrament of the G2Church of Health and Healing.
In a world where science has led to incredible advances in public health, it's both baffling and terrifying that a group like the G2Church of Health and Healing could emerge, peddling dangerous pseudoscience wrapped in a shroud of spirituality. Founded by former Scientologist Jim Humble in 2010, this so-called church became a front for marketing Miracle Mineral Solution, MMS, a substance that Humble and his followers brazenly claim could cure everything from cancer to autism to HIV/AIDS. Hey everyone, it's Dragunilla here. And today we're going to dive into a pretty wild story that's been shocking and a little scary to learn about. We're talking about the G2Church of Health and Healing, a group that's been spreading some seriously dangerous ideas under the guise of miracle cures. Ever wondered what that whole drinking bleach thing during the pandemic was all about? Well, we're going to break down what it is, who is behind it, and why it's causing so much harm. So, if you're into learning about real-life stories that are stranger than fiction, you're in the right place. And hey, if you find this video interesting, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on more deep dives like this one. Alright, let's get started. MMS, the poison they call a cure. To understand the dangers of the G2Church, we must first grasp the grim reality of what MMS actually is. It's a far cry from a miracle. MMS, or Miracle Mineral Solution, is essentially 28% sodium chlorite mixed with distilled water. When combined with an acid like citric acid, it produces chlorine dioxide, a powerful oxidizing agent better suited for bleaching industrial surfaces than treating ailments in the human body.
In fact, look what happened when we poured some of it, undiluted, onto a pair of jeans. The denim turned white through both pant legs.
For those unfamiliar, an oxidizing agent like chlorine dioxide is a chemical that causes other substances to lose electrons. When chlorine dioxide is ingested, it doesn't just kill pathogens. It wages war on the body's cells, damaging proteins, lipids, and even DNA. The damage can lead to inflammation, tissue destruction, and in severe cases, organ failure. Chlorine dioxide is indeed effective for bleaching wood pulp in paper manufacturing or disinfecting municipal water supplies, but inside the human body, it's a disaster waiting to happen. The amount used to purify drinking water is typically measured in parts per million, the correct ratio being about 1 part chlorine dioxide to 5 million parts water. But the doses recommended by the G2Church are beyond astronomically higher.
After putting the glass into the liquid the second time, it will saturate the solution to the desired value of around 3000 ppm, that's 0.3%.
Making it not just hazardous but potentially lethal. When ingested, MMS frequently causes nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and severe dehydration, symptoms that the church misleadingly claims are signs that the solution is working.
The Archbishop teaches that nausea and diarrhea are actually signs that the MMS is working. Nothing to worry about. Laughed off by Archbishop Grenon.
Yeah, we go a little too fast to get a little diarrhea, a little nausea. They got diarrhea, a little nausea.
In reality, these are clear indications of poisoning. Chlorine dioxide doesn't discriminate. It aggressively attacks tissue and cells, leading to serious complications like liver failure, respiratory failure, brain damage, and death. The liver, overwhelmed by the toxic load, can give out entirely. The lungs, subjected to oxidative stress, can fail. And the brain, rich in the very fats that chlorine dioxide loves to oxidize, is particularly vulnerable, leading to potentially irreversible cognitive damage. One of the most grotesque lies peddled by the church is that the corrosive impact of MMS on the gastrointestinal tract, the stomach lining eroding so severely that tissue is sometimes expelled, is actually a detox process.
And these are the things that are coming out of kids' bodies after these bleach enema treatments. We're not going to show these pictures to those of you at home, but you can see the audience's reactions to these photos.
And just to be clear, this is probably actually the lining of these children's intestines
and
being shed
and
from
not
the
parasites.
bleach. No, there's no science behind any of this. None of this has had any evidence whatsoever.
That's why they won't go to the doctor. That's why they won't go to the emergency room, because they know there's no science behind it, and they know if they show up at a medical facility or a doctor's office, doctors as mandatory reporters are going to report them to Child Protective Services.
The church insists that these horrifying reactions, finding strings of flesh in your poop, are parasites being purged from the body.
So here comes the parasite cleanse in the mail, and I started that, and oh my goodness, that freaked me out. I took photos. I mean, if anybody's like, brave enough to see the pictures I've taken, we're talking some really weird stuff that was coming out of me.
In reality, it's the body itself being torn apart.
I would not recommend this product, and I don't know any doctor who would.
Jim Humble. At the epicenter of this nightmare is Jim Humble, the so-called archbishop in a bejeweled Panama hat who conjured up the Genesis 2 Church and its toxic sacrament. Humble's background is as far from medical science as you can get. He was a failed gold prospector from Alabama with zero formal education in chemistry, medicine, or biology.
Chlorine dioxide itself is a killer. It goes in the body and it kills the pathogens. It oxidizes the poisons that are in the body. Like heavy metals and that sort of thing.
For decades before founding the Genesis 2 Church, he dabbled in the dubious practices of Scientology, even reaching the level of auditor, a role that involved canceling others in the church's pseudoscientific methods.
The e-meter is a vital piece of equipment that is essential. It's an essential tool for members of the Church of Scientology, and it ultimately is akin to the confession. You hold these cans and through it runs a current, and apparently it's reading my emotional response to questions.
Scientology's deep-seated mistrust of the medical establishment likely fueled Humble's later ventures into quackery, as he latched on to the idea that modern medicine was the enemy of true health.
It sees psychiatrists as being enemies, not only enemies on this earth, but also cosmic enemies.
Humble's transformation from a struggling prospector to a self-proclaimed health guru stemmed from a now infamous expedition to the rainforests of South America in the 1990s. According to his account, while prospecting for gold near the Amazon, members of his team contracted malaria. With no medical supplies and no clinic nearby, Humble claims he improvised with a water purification solution containing sodium chloride. Allegedly, after administering this concoction to his sick companions, they miraculously recovered within hours, a story that conveniently lacks any supporting evidence. From this dubious anecdote, Humble spun a narrative that would expand to include claims that MMS could cure virtually every major illness.
The diseases which MMS has been shown to be efficacious against. You're talking malaria, AIDS, cancer, what else?
Flu, colds, all types of diseases of the mouth.
He authored books, held seminars, and built an online following, all while pushing this dangerous snake oil as a cure-all. Despite the severe nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea experienced by those who took MMS, Humble and his followers insisted that these were signs of the body detoxifying, a dangerously misguided interpretation of what was actually poisoning. Actually, Humble didn't stop at marketing industrial bleach as a safe-to-use cure-all medication. He framed its use as an act of rebellion against a sinister global conspiracy.
So Jim, this is a beautiful cameo which describes the treachery facing humankind today when it's trying to face off overreaching government, Big Brother, these authorities that have been imposing themselves on the human story for far too long. They've got to a point now in the 21st century where they've dreamt up millions of statutes and ordinances and provisions which are self-serving and allow those corporation governments and agencies and their lobby groups, all of which are financed variously by the big oil and gas and by the big pharmaceutical and petrochemical interests. So we've got this terrible standoff between these corporate fictions, which are usurious, money-making, genocidal agendas, and common living men and women of the living soil. That's the standoff I'm seeing today. Would you agree more or less with that?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
In his ebook, Master Mineral Solution of the Third Millennium, Humble declares, "Our leaders are trying to kill us. All these new diseases are traceable back to government laboratories." He paints a dystopian picture where the FDA and pharmaceutical companies are in cahoots, intentionally suppressing life-saving treatments like MMS to maintain their profits. They destroy a business and a person's whole life to suppress a cure. The conspiracy theories in Humble's writings go further, suggesting that for over 100 years, real cancer cures have been systematically buried. He writes, "Lives have been destroyed, people have been jailed and sent to prison, and books have been burned, all in the name of maintaining the status quo." According to Humble, MMS is the ultimate rebellion against this shadowy cabal, a do-it-yourself affordable cure that supposedly works when nothing else does.
Yeah,
Why was it never adopted by the pharmaceutical industries and the health ministries of the world who are mandated to heal human conditions?
You gotta be kidding. They wanted to make the maximum amount of money from their drugs, and the drugs of course treat symptoms. The drugs don't treat the cause, and MMS treats the cause, like anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 or 3 months, but it gets everything.
Humble's embrace of the Herxheimer reaction, a legitimate medical term describing a temporary worsening of symptoms as the body reacts to dying pathogens, was another layer of deception. He twisted this concept to justify the horrific side effects of MMS, convincing his followers that the more they suffered, the more effective the treatment was. The G2Church of Health and Healing. By 2010, as regulatory pressure mounted, Humble took a calculated step to protect his operation. He founded the G2Church of Health and Healing. This wasn't part of a spiritual revelation. It was a strategic move to shield his activities under the guise of religious freedom.
So I said, let's call it the G2Church. And we said, you got to do this, folks, or you're going to go to jail. You can't arrest us from doing one of our sacraments.
By declaring himself Archbishop and dubbing MMS as sacrament, Humble hoped to dodge the legal consequences of selling bleach as medicine. The so-called non-religious church's doctrine was simple yet dangerously delusional. Most diseases, they claimed, were caused by toxins and pathogens that could be purged from the body using MMS. Now, the solution wasn't just a cure, it was a divine practice, a way to cleanse both the body and the spirit.
I get my sinus attack. I have done numerous operations before, and there was a time I was using antibiotics every alternate month. But after coming to homeopathy and MMS, I was able to control that with no antibiotics at all. Praise be to God.
As the church grew, so did the influence of Mark Grenon, a former missionary with no medical training who became one of the church's most prominent leaders. Grenon's charisma made him a natural spokesperson for the cause, and he played a key role in spreading the church's message.
Making claims that what's in this glass is a miracle cure for virtually any disease.
This is our sacrament.
Preying on the desperate and vulnerable, including women with breast cancer and the parents of autistic children.
He and his sons organized seminars where attendees paid hefty fees to learn how to produce and distribute MMS themselves.
At the end, a quick investiture and an official-looking ministerial accreditation signed by Archbishop Grenon.
It's a get-out-of-jail-free card, to sell snake oil.
These seminars weren't just about spreading the word, they were about building a pyramid scheme with Grenon and Humble at the top, profiting handsomely while their followers bore the risks. Humble, sensing the heat from US authorities, eventually relocated to Mexico, hoping to continue his operations with less interference. Meanwhile, the Grenons kept the church's US operations running, ramping up their activities even during the pandemic, a move that drew the ire of the FDA and other regulatory bodies. A church under siege. Despite Humble's retreat to Mexico, the Genesis 2 Church couldn't escape the watchful eyes of the US authorities. The church's open and aggressive promotion of MMS as a cure for everything from Down syndrome to HIV/AIDS and even cocaine finally led to a crackdown. The church had tried to skirt the law by selling MMS as two separate components, sodium chloride and citric acid, leaving it to the consumers to mix the two into the dangerous chlorine dioxide. But this thinly veiled attempt at legal loopholing didn't hold up under scrutiny. In April of 2020, federal agents raided the homes of Mark Grenon and his sons, Joseph, Jonathan and Jordan, seizing large quantities of MMS and gathering evidence of their illegal activities.
2 of the Grenon sons were arrested after a raid on the family's Florida property where federal agents seized thousands of bottles of MMS and stacks of cash. This photo shown to jurors this week shows rodent droppings on the floor of the shed where the Grenons were producing their so-called cure. Then Mark Grenon and a third son, Joseph, had fled the country, but were extradited last year.
The Grenons were arrested and charged with multiple offenses related to the illegal sale and distribution of unapproved drugs. In October of 2023, Mark Grenon and his eldest son were sentenced to 151 months or 12.5 years in prison, while the younger sons received 6-month sentences.
The Grenons acted as their own attorneys at trial, but then refused to participate and remained silent for the 2-day court trial. The jury deliberated for about 5 minutes before returning the guilty verdicts late this afternoon.
Just weeks before the sentencing, on September the 1st of 2023, Jim Humble passed away at the age of 90, still clinging to the delusion that MMS was a miraculous cure.
I think studies for the uses and benefits of chlorine dioxide are very valuable. But it should be done by honest and trustworthy organizations and persons. I'm afraid there will be many who will try to bring about false and negative findings. It is hard to believe that there are wealthy and unethical people of this world who always want to make money from the sick and dying.
In 2024, the remnants of the Genesis 2 Church, now leaderless and heavily scrutinized, struggled to maintain their operations. With the Grenons incarcerated and Jim Humble's passing, the church's once vast network was fractured into small, disorganized groups. These splinter cells, operating mostly online and through encrypted channels, continue to promote MMS as a miracle cure, but their influence has waned significantly due to ongoing legal actions and increased public awareness of the dangers associated with chlorine dioxide. Thankfully, law enforcement agencies seem to remain vigilant, actively monitoring these groups and swiftly shutting down any attempts to revive large-scale operations.
If you already have MMS or products like it in your home, throw them away and get medical help if you've used them and have symptoms like diarrhea, severe dehydration, or vomiting.
Thank you so much for watching the entire video to the end. If you found this video interesting, consider giving me a thumbs up. If you want more videos like this, please subscribe. Thank you!